Hello, everyone, and welcome to Give Me Some Good News, the most positive hospitality podcast in existence. I am your host, Caleb Sullivan, here, and it is a solo show today with me and a wonderful guest, someone who not only is a friend of mine, but taught me the most valuable piece of information when it comes to cooking chicken, Erin White. Erin, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. You're gonna have to refresh my memory on the chicken.
Yes. So me and Aaron, we go back. We're both 30 under 30s with DI. And so we always try to get together at every conference. Also, she is like the karaoke scheduling aficionado. We always find the karaoke spots together. But it all started when we were in Seattle. No, sorry. Salt Lake City, the other S city. And I was talking about how I like cooking for the family. Like I do most of the cooking. And I was like, but man, cooking chicken breast is a pain in the neck because it takes forever. And you're like, what you do is you butterfly them first. And I was like, I don't know why I never thought about that, but that piece of advice
True.
has changed my meal prep for the week. So I appreciate
And
it.
and shaved your cooking time in half. Got to feed that family.
You gotta feed all the kids running around. But man, I'm so stoked to have you on the podcast. You know, you and I have been friends for I'd say probably the past 4 or 5 years, and um, you and I both work for different ad agencies in our space. Um, but tell me a little bit about your career progression. We'll kind of start there, and what led you to envision it.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's actually been about 20 years. I
Wow.
graduated 20 years ago this year from Indiana University with a degree in tourism management. So this has been a conscious decision that I've made throughout the entirety of my career to support and live in that tourism space. So, started my career at IU Athletics. If you are a college football fan, you will know that Indiana University is the national champions for football this year. So, it's been really incredible to see that full circle moment. But after a couple of years at athletics, which was a very rewarding career, I realized though that I wanted to be one of the people attending the events, not one of the people working the events. I started my career in event management again, mid 2000s. Everybody wanted to be like a wedding planner, an event planner, and I was one of those people as well. But during my time at athletics, I discovered there was an opportunity to work with the Convention and Visitors Bureau. What's a Convention and Visitors Bureau? Well, I was lucky enough to find out what that was during my coursework in tourism management at IU, and it was a no-brainer. So in 2007, I joined the Visit Bloomington, which obviously Bloomington, Indiana, as convention sales manager, which then quickly morphed into convention sales and services manager. And then after a couple years, took on the travel media role. And when I ended my career after about 15 years in destination marketing, I was serving as Visit Bloomington's director of marketing and media relations. So really focused in on that leisure travel experience for the visitors to Bloomington, which obviously is a great college town. And then I landed at EnvisionIt, which is where I'm at now, agency side, and couldn't be happier. Really saw some incredible things that they were doing in the space. And a former colleague actually was the one who pulled me away from the destination marketing world. And it's been about 2.5 years now. So really just thrilled to continue to serve in this space. I'm really passionate about destination marketing, as you all know.
Yeah, you really are. And one of the things you said that I love is continue to serve in this space, which I think one of the great things about you is your heart of service toward this industry. One of the things I talk about a lot is what I call the friendship economy of tourism, which is where we both get the most out of growing our industry as DMOs and service providers and vendors, if you will, really work together to push the industry forward. And the
Yes.
reason we're having this conversation today is because you did something really cool on LinkedIn that I was like, wow, this is a golden standard in, you and I haven't even talked about like my theories on friendship economy, but of tourism, but this truly is a golden standard, a gold star of providing value before a conference. And I saw it and I was like, dang, I got to get Aaron on to talk about this. And so, kind of talk. So I'll tee it up a little bit. So, CEO Summit, as at the time of recording, the CEO Summit, I believe, is coming up next week, um,
Correct.
which is perfect timing. You posted an article on LinkedIn that said the 5 conversations DMO leaders should be having at the CEO summit. And I was like, wow. There's 2 things that really stood out to me. From a biz dev side, it is, hey guys, I'm going to be here, but I have things to say, and I have things to talk about. But from the providing value side, which I believe the two are really one and the same, and what I would argue is the more important side, it stood out to me. I thought, what a great way to kind of prime the pump of solving problems during the time you're going to be in California at this summit. So, um, just kudos to you. I thought it was really
Yeah.
impressive. And here we are talking about it. So, I've give me the down low, like what inspired it. What are some of the trends that you're seeing sticking out, and what are some of these conversations you're hoping to have at the CEO summit next week?
Yeah, I think, the inspiration obviously is kind of like what you were talking about here, is really giving folks something to be thinking about, chewing on, so to speak, rather than and wanting to connect over a conversation with something that we're both passionate about versus, oh, here comes a vendor.
Right.
They want to just talk about the services that they provide, and that's absolutely not the case. So it's, we're all in these trenches together as destination marketing professionals. I will die as a DMO person, right? It's something that's deeply ingrained in my blood. Like I said, 20 years doing this. So wanted to have that conversation with folks. I think that I am very fortunate to be in the position to attend a lot of conferences and events. I think this is like the fourth or fifth one that I've attended, and we're just now at the end of the first quarter this year. And so I've had the privilege and pleasure of hearing a lot of what's going on. This is a volatile situation that we're experiencing in the travel space. As we all know, there are a lot of things happening in the news that impact travel and tourism. So let's get into it, right? Talking about how does that economy um, impact travelers, and as destination leaders, what are we doing about it? And really tapping into that, I guess, from the get-go is where we're at with those types of things. So, I mean, we can talk through each of the points if you want to get deeper into it, but I didn't know if there were any questions that you had first that would shape that conversation.
Yeah, I think we definitely can. And I think, again, the beauty of this is going into, we're in trying times in the travel and tourism industry. I don't think
Right.
anyone would disagree with that. But what I would say is going into this conference with a solution oriented mind, not only but like asking the right questions and providing your insights and solutions. Um, it's just a great way to handle problem solving in our space, and I think that's something I'd love to dive more into. So yeah, let's kind of get into your 5 points, which I all agree with. Like these are great talking points for professionals. So the first one is really you said, how are we pivoting from inspiration to reassurance in this K-shaped economy? I've heard a lot of thought leaders in our space talking about the K-shaped economy,
Mhm.
talking about how, and in my opinion, I agree with this, but how there might be even like an underserved middle class of traveler where a lot of us have been going more luxury, even when maybe we shouldn't be. We've kind of forsaken some of the travelers that kind of, got us our start, if you will, and really are the underpinnings of our tourism economy. But yeah, let's kind of start there and
Sure.
kind of jump into your thoughts.
Well, Adam Sachs was the one who brought this conversation to the table. The first time that I was hearing about it was at the TTRA Marketing Outlook Forum at the beginning of the year. Always a great way to kick off the year with research, which to me is paramount and kind of woven through the content that I created for this piece. And so, yeah, at the sacrifice, we are seeing the evaporation, if not already evaporation, of kind of that middle space for traveler. Either we're looking at the affluent travelers to pay for the budget travelers, right? At the other end of the economy. And so what does that mean for the folks in the middle, which as destination marketers, like for myself in the Midwest, most of the folks that we're attracting are those average travelers. And so, how, as destination leaders, are we addressing that within our individual destinations? And what types of ways are you leading within your organization to make sure that you are like converting that traveler from someone who may be like hesitant because they are a little bit concerned about things that are going on, and it's like, oh, is this something that I should be spending money on within um, my tight vacation schedule that I have, to turning them into a confident traveler saying like, no, this is absolutely the way that I want to be spending. This is where I want to be going, and this is why. And so how are we as leaders activating our teams within our DMO to be addressing those conversations when we're marketing to them, in general?
Yeah, and that's huge. I think in travel and tourism, and I saw it in my time at the DMO. I've seen it in my time serving DMOs, both on the agency and on the media sales side. But there's been this rush toward luxury. And I think one of the things that happens is we forget luxury means different things to different people. I'm reading a book right now called The Millionaire Next Door, and it's kind of like an older, like budget finance book. But essentially, at the time when it was written in the mid 90s, it talks about the largest segment of millionaires in our country. And a lot of them are nouveau riche first generation millionaires. A
Mhm.
lot of them don't fall into this spectrum of being in the nicest houses and having the nicest car. A lot of them own businesses, they're hardworking, and they kind of live below their means, and hence their net worth increases. And I say all this to bring up, I think a lot of times we can look at household income and see current household income as the sole factor or generator of like this is a wealthy traveler. Well, there is this whole underserved market that I think we kind of have shifted away from being what we'll say if luxury traveler we're targeting is really, the top, call it 15-20% of the income tax bracket. What about those lower brackets who have a lower income, a higher net worth, and they have the propensity and the means to travel, but we're not really targeting them because we're looking for these other individuals. So I think at the end of the day, what really stood out to me in that book so far is our view maybe as destination marketers on who is the Lux R&R traveler has shifted toward people who fit that bill, but we've kind of forgotten this whole middle ground or like upper middle class who their vision of luxury could be flying economy and staying in a short-term rental with their families, but they're still spending a lot of money in market. It's just that traveler looks different, if that makes sense. And so I think this is great. I think there's a lot of opportunity, and I truly believe travel is a need. However, we have to be careful about how we go about bringing in those travelers and making sure that when we're marketing to this underutilized middle class of, if you will, of traveler, that we're presenting messages that are appealing to them as well, is kind of what I'm getting at here.
I think what's interesting also is that oftentimes, again, Midwest perspective here, but we're operating with a lot of those select service properties. Most of the time, DMOs are solely funded through that innkeeper's tax that's collected when a visitor spends the night in their destination, right? And so you've got all of these properties and these folks from revenue management who are turning to the DMO to say, what are you doing to help increase the occupancy in my property? I've got all of these things to offer, right? I've got my free breakfast, my free parking. And for the luxury traveler that I think sometimes as destination marketers, we get really hung up on because we think that that's the pinnacle, right? Like it's the prettiest version of what a visitor looks like in our destination. Um, and then we have a tendency to just kind of remove ourselves from that middle market, and because it's not pretty. And
Right.
uh, at the risk of sound, I don't know exactly how that makes us come across, but it's really segmented, and we're being kind of classist sometimes,
Yep.
if we're not thinking about it correctly. And so I just want to make sure that, when we're being asked by the folks that are assisting us in, lodging these visitors, I think that that's really where a lot of it comes from in my mind, from a luxury standpoint. Um, that's where it starts, rather, I suppose. Yeah, we just really need to make sure that we're making room for lots of different types of conversations that we can be having with segmentation within media and marketing spends and things like that. We have more ability than ever to be able to target different messaging for different people at different times and meet them where they're at, not only in their like life journey, but in their pocketbooks as well.
Yeah, and the right traveler for you doesn't have to be this Hilux R&R traveler that everyone's going after, just because there's only so much of this population we can bring in. And once the market's tapped, like as much
Yes.
like a good example, like um I'll pick on some DMOs here, but like for me, so I worked for Discover Jackson County for 4 years, and it's really cool the way our county's segmented. We have like a $2 million average household price up the mountain in Cashers, and where I live, not there, but where I live, it's Silva. It's about, it's like $250,000, $300,000 houses. So you can think about the segmentation between there.
Yeah.
Second homeowners up in Cashers, families down here in Silva. Um,
Yeah.
as much as I love Cashers, if I'm marketing Silva, I'm not going after people who are also going to be trying to determine between Silva, North Carolina and Discover the Palm Beaches. So we have to be really realistic about who we are as a destination. But when I was marketing Silva, I was marketing to families, and that was more important because there's more family activities. And so I think it's important for us as destination marketers to be real with ourselves. And how do we the right, generate the right value and the right revenue for the right traveler, to really kind of curb that K-shaped economy? Because travel is a need, and we're looking at things like gas prices are really high right now. At the same time, TSA lines are really long. It might be time to kind of dust off that old COVID workbook and be like, what about the Great American Road Trip? What about short, short haul, 3 hour or less vacations, and really tapping into that market? So I just think it's a good thing to start talking about more. And again, kind of go into the whole premise of this conversation. You're teeing this up, and I think, more conversations like this need to be had
Sure.
proactively. Um, and just with the TTRA is great, and I think that was a great way to kick off the year.
Thanks. Yeah, the loyalty of the middle is also something that's really interesting.
Yeah,
From the luxury travel, like my brain is starting to like click into gear, so to speak, right? So
yeah,
the luxury traveler, in my opinion, they're not necessarily repeating the exact same experiences year after year, but that kind of the middle traveler, the average traveler, the ones that we want, the hardest part of our job is to get them to come once, and
yep,
then we hook them right with all of the great things that our destinations have to offer, and then what that does is create that repeat visitor, that repeat visitation, and that word of mouth marketing that is just so invaluable. And so I think that that's also a residual effect of making sure that we're not segmenting ourselves so far into one area that we're forgetting about the people that really provide us with that loyalty. And that is what sustains our destinations when there are issues that potentially are occurring within the news and the media that are impacting that ability to, make it work, right?
yeah.
Within our pocketbooks.
Absolutely. Yeah. Never forsake your biggest fan base, I think is really important. Kind of the second point you tapped into here, which I love, is our data infrastructure a bonus or a core pillar of our advocacy? And the reason I love this is, in my opinion, proper advocacy is telling data in a story. I think that is literally what advocacy is. If you break down what advocacy means to DMOs. And so it's about how you tell that story. And I like the way that you put it. Is it a bonus or is it a core pillar of advocacy? Because it really has to be. And I'm going to pass it over to you to kind of unpack that. But I thought that was a great point. Well said.
Oh, thanks. It's advocacy is everyone's job within the destination. And so as leaders, kind of, again, going into this conversation at the CEO summit when you're seated next to your peers and your colleagues, how are we equipping all of the folks within our four walls to be able to tell the stories? Because you know what it's like getting stopped on the street or in a restaurant by someone who you would consider to be a key stakeholder within your destination and asking, like, well, what is the value that this is providing, or why should we be funding tourism versus sidewalks or, other things like that. And so, what and it's really easy also sometimes to leave data out of the budget, right? It's like, oh, that's a nice to have, not necessarily a need to have. But in the same time, we're talking about advocacy more than ever in that it's the one of the things that we should be doing every single day. So I think that there is a correlation there that we need to make sure that we are funding those studies to make sure that we get the information we need to arm our teams, our board members, our political cheerleaders, our constituents within the space to make sure that they're helping tell that story accurately because the data doesn't lie.
Yep. No, and I agree. I think the way I look at data, this might be a hot take. This is probably the first time I've ever talked about this. I look at data as car insurance. It's something you need to have, and when you don't have it and you need it, it sucks. So at the end of the day, if you don't have a data provider that you trust, providing the data that you need, that you can again use it to tell a story, an advocacy story to your stakeholders and your constituents, then that is the a car insurance equivalent of not having insurance if you don't have that. Because whenever you're standing there, you just wrecked your car, you have no one to call, your job's on the line. And I think
Yep.
having accurate data, using that data correctly, a lot of times I've found over my years working in this space, some people will get it. Maybe they use it for 1 year and then they don't fully utilize it. They just kind of say it's like, oh, it's a thing I had, or maybe I got some ARPA funds or whatever to purchase it, and they don't fully leverage the data. When in reality, forward-thinking destinations are using that data to make their best decisions, and to really to further support their marketing initiatives and their funding. Um, I like this. This is something we said at Paradise, and something I've kind of wrapped into my professional acumen as well. I like to be data led, not data driven. I think a lot of times if we just look at ones and zeros, then we kind of lose the human element in our marketing. And I'm sure you understand this being on the agency side as well, just as much as
Yes.
anybody. But it's good to be led by the data, but not fully, held to the data as like the end all be all. Because the data landscape's ever changing. You want to make sure that there's a human element as well.
It's the human element that we should really be focused in on because if we have data from the very beginning on who we should even be targeting, that's helping tell the story, and making sure that we are being very mindful of the tax dollars that we are in charge of using to promote our destinations. So making sure that we've got an accurate picture of like what does our ideal visitor look like, but this kind of also goes back to the conversation we were just having about the K-shaped economy. It's like, yes, the ideal visitor is one thing, but let's talk about the actual visitor first,
Mm,
right? And so then we have the data to be able to tell us who that person is. Okay, great. Then do we go after them? And then what was the success? What did it look like? And then how is that going to continue to inform future decisions? I've
yeah.
never thought about it like an insurance policy, but that is such a great way to put it because I know that I personally have been guilty also of we have to have this, like, this is such a great piece of data that we want to have available at our fingertips. And then, as you know, we're constantly being asked to do more with less. We're busier than ever. We're being spread in as many avenues as humanly possible. And the first thing that falls off the shelf is getting into that platform and reviewing that data
Yep.
and making decisions with it. So,
Yeah.
love that hot take.
Yeah, and going back to the insurance thing, like for those of you who know me well, I've got a 16-year-old that I raised, and he's on my car insurance. Well, guess whose bill it is now. My That car insurance bill is now more than my wife's car payment. So like it's expensive, but the return whenever, Lord willing, he does not wreck his Jeep, but if he does wreck his Jeep, the return on that is going to be worth it. So
Yes.
start looking at data, as a part of your marketing plan. You have to put it in your budget in a similar way to I'm not going to not pay State Farm and cross my fingers that Jamie doesn't roll his Jeep down a hill when he's 16 and, made of
Oh,
gasoline because he's a teenage boy, right?
yes.
So let's start rethinking that. And I really liked that point for that reason, because it's not just about the data you have, it's about what you do with it. And it
Yes.
is a pivotal part of advocacy. Um, Going into your next point, I love this one too. I loved all these. I'm really biased. I thought this was brilliant, obviously. How are we managing reputation as the product? I think as destination marketers, we run into this situation where, hey, we don't have any, like, we're not turning keys, we're not necessarily always booking, not handling direct bookings. A lot of times we're not directly handling, I put this head in this bed.
Mhm.
But I believe our brand and our reputation is actually what we're selling. And I can always dive off of that cliff and go into greater detail there and chat about it. But how are we managing that reputation as the products? Yeah, what are your thoughts, Erin?
Well, yeah, at the end of the day, that is our job. Like you said, we don't own the widget, so to speak. We don't control the room rates. We don't set the prices for the attractions, nor the retail, tchotchkes that people are buying within our destinations. But we do control the reputation of the destination by helping tell the story of the destination. And when more than, I mean, as you know, and I know, there have been a lot of things happening within the communities that we serve that we don't have any control over headlines wise. But how are we creating that sense of emotional belonging, and making sure that that visitor feels comfortable in our destination before they get to our destination? So
Mm,
we are responsible for telling that story and finding the ways to tell it authentically, well before someone even thinks about visiting us. And I think that that's something that we haven't always necessarily thought of, I guess, but has become so much more in a post-COVID world. We've become so much more conscious of how to do how we are doing that. So, like one of the questions that I had posed, and it's, would really just love to get some feedback from the people in these rooms of like, are we building the discipline of disruption into our leadership teams so we can protect our
mm,
brand's trust when the narrative shifts unexpectedly? And so, what as leaders are you doing to make sure that that's happening within your four walls? Again, managing your team and making sure that those conversations are happening not only organically, but it safely, because a lot of what's going on is really polarizing right now as well. And so
yeah,
there are varying opinions of the way that things should be getting managed. And I think that being as open as we can within our walls first is really important. And that oftentimes comes from the top down within our
yeah.
organizations.
Yeah, no, and you bring up a good point that trust is everything. We had, and you know this gentleman well, Jeremiah Cook. We had him on the
Yes.
podcast a few episodes ago. We were talking about what does a healthy leadership in a destination organization look like? And he was talking about how there needs to be transparency between leadership and the staff. We Leadership and staff will not always get along. He said a line that I'll never forget. He said, "Hating your boss is the most American thing there is." And I was like, "Wow, I never thought about it that way." But he was talking about like how at the end of the day, not everyone's going to agree, but you garner trust, you put belief behind the mission whenever there is a level of transparency from leadership. And sometimes, I brought this up, I said, sometimes not knowing the answer is totally okay. Letting them know that you don't know the answer, but that you're working hard to find it out. So um, we are in trying times as an industry. We don't know the answers, but I think the best and brightest will emerge as we try to navigate this together. And I believe the best thing we can do as two service providers having this conversation is to continue to provide value to the industry and to try to help solve these problems that we're all facing together. But yeah, I thought that was just a great point.
And
Um,
making sure that we're having those conversations before something like we're all one news story away from having, NBC nightly news in our backyards, right?
yep.
And so I think that we need to be really realistic about having conversations and saying like, well, that'll never happen here,
Right.
or like, oh, thank God that that's only happening in other places. Like, again, you're one event away from something happening. And so the more we need to be like conscious and aware of what could potentially be happening in the future and like what are we doing from the beginning to make sure that we're
A
just
hundred
not caught
percent.
off guard. We can't be caught off guard. And I think that that's kind of the gist of what I wanted to talk about, where it's what are we doing to
Yeah.
get in front of these things? And it's not just an emergency preparedness PR kit, right? That you dust off and freak out when you realize like, oh, this is so antiquated.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
way more than that.
Yeah, as someone who's written a crisis communication plan for a DMO in the past, I could tell you the nuance is what's between a crisis and day-to-day issues. There's like a gray area, and so
Yes.
not every day-to-day issue is going to trigger the crisis plan, but you do need to have contingencies in place to be able to navigate those reputational changes. Yeah, that yeah, as
Well,
well
and
said. And yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say disruptions aren't always negative either.
Right.
So it's kind of like how what's what's the playfulness that we like to operate, what level that we like to operate within on our social media so that we can take advantage, this is
Yep.
low-hanging fruit, right? But again, a lot of these decisions ultimately come from leadership and it's like, okay, well, are we going to lean into the trends? Are we going to lean into the viral meme opportunities?
Yep.
Like the one that's like, this is so corny, but the one that's just been really cracking me up lately is like the double Dutch bus dance videos on
Yeah.
TikTok. Like, I haven't seen any DMOs like, bust that out yet, but how hilarious would that be? Like the other ones where it's these are the people who are, helping tell your social media story, like all of the baby pictures or little kid pictures. Like, it's
Yeah.
that humanization element. And it's again, in a way, like that does create a sense of emotional like belonging that I was also touching on. So uh
Absolutely.
it, it's lots and lots of different things, but it we can infuse some fun and personality into the heavy stuff too.
Absolutely. No, I love that. And going along with the thing of this podcast, bringing some good news. Like there are good things that happen in the world. We could capitalize on those too. And speaking of human connection, your fourth point was in the age of AI, how do we scale human connection? Which I would argue I loved all these points, but I think this one has the most opportunity to run a little further. And I think this question right here could be a keynote in and of itself. So I'll kick this back over to you, but yeah, kind of unpack that a little bit for us.
Yeah, so that's the conversation, right? So yeah, everyone's really concerned right now about. Well, I was attending the Indiana Tourism Conference, Indiana State Tourism Association conference last week, and one of the conversations that came up was like, I'm really afraid that I am not going to be able to tell the story authentically because I'm having AI do it for me. And the kind of rebuttal to that is, no, this is actually amazing because when you're properly utilizing AI or having it do some of that heavy lifting for you, get all of the operational kind of behind the scenes stuff, the tasks that we hate doing, like to be quite frank,
Yep.
automated, then it frees us up to have the human connection more than ever. It gives the time to meet with people one on one in person. Like tell me what's new in the destination, right? Like what do you have going on within your attraction, or what should I know so that I can reshape this conversation for visitors, and that kind of like what I was talking about earlier, where we have are constantly being asked to do more with less and stretched thinner than ever with smaller budgets. How can we utilize AI to help us offload some of that stuff so that we can focus on the human connection? And that it seems kind of like counterintuitive or the antithesis of the rise of AI. But it's actually like the core.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I some thought leaders in our space, I don't want to fully misquote here, but I have heard like Stewart from Visit Myrtle Beach. He's
Yeah.
talked about when AI was kind of on the growth trajectory in like 2022, 2023, he would ask his staff, "Hey, what have you used AI to do new this week?" And now it's kind of just become part of their organization. Um, One of the cool things that he does is in his role, and again, I don't want to misspeak, but this is my understanding. He believes that it's like 50% in the office, 50% on the streets, like meeting with stakeholders, meeting with hoteliers. And he's the CEO now, with the way that they've divided or I think combined their chamber and their CVB. So,
Mhm.
um, again, he's automating systems to be able to have more bandwidth to provide more value to his stakeholders. The other part of that too that I thought was really clever is, if I can remember it, he was talking about how you need to, or this is more Adam's point on destination discourse, but you need to start thinking as a strategist, not just as a button pusher, right? Like
Yeah.
not just the tactician. So, uh, I think that's important. Use right now, AI is a great tool if harnessed correctly. And
Yes.
if you have a lot of M dashes in your emails, we know you're not harnessing it correctly. So figure that one out. But at
RIP M
this,
dashes
yeah,
though, right?
RIPM dashes, right? Because I mean, they are good to use. Like I did use them
Oh,
typing
right.
before, yeah, before ChatGPT. But so I think using it correctly, using it as a tool,
Yes.
does free you up to get into the
Yeah.
community more. You know?
It's all we're talking about is okay, the advocacy component, protecting our funding and being able to tell our stories correctly. But how can we do that if we are behind our desks, making sure that we're running our board reports correctly and that we are, you know, scraping our event calendars and providing as many robust activities for people to choose from so that they, want to visit our destinations. Like a lot of that is manual right now, and it doesn't have to be. This can be an automated opportunity for us within the like industry outside of destinations. Enterprise industry is already doing this and seeing great results. And so, uh, destinations need to be taking advantage of that too, because yes, I wouldn't want to paraphrase incorrectly either, but the the meat of our jobs, so to speak, is building that connection within the partnerships that exist within not only our communities, but within our colleagues, within our states, and then obviously within larger organizations like Destinations International as well. Like it all works together, and the more time that we have to be having these kind of one-on-one conversations or group conversations, human to human, uh, like it's a win-win-win, right? It's a
Yeah.
triple win.
No,
That's why I
absolutely.
want people to embrace like the utilization of AI and really come to terms with any qualms or kind of like hesitation points that people might be having because they're like, oh, well, that would make me like a robot, and that takes me away from the human connection or the humanization of destination marketing. And really, we just need to think about shifting our mindset and like the way we're framing it to ourselves so that we can like give ourselves permission, so to speak, to
Mm,
not have to take it all on ourselves. Like it doesn't have to be done by me to know that it's being done correctly now, which is
right.
still a huge transition for a lot of people. But the earlier you embrace it, like the better off we are. It's kind of like moving from print ads as the only way to promote our destinations in magazines to we all saw the folks who were early adopters in social media and social media advertising when those really came on the market. I'm old enough to know like when we created our Facebook page and Instagram handle, right? Like it
Yep.
was transformative. This is no different.
Yeah, no, it's really not. And again, this is not something that we can lag behind just because it's not apples to apples comparing this to the internet. And so adoption in this has to be exponentially faster than as DMOs adopted the internet, in my opinion.
Yes, and it gives me a little bit of pause. I mean, I would be lying if I was not a little concerned with some of the pushback that I've heard just anecdotally from individual conversations that I've been having with people in the destination space about their hesitation to embrace the adoption. And it's actually like across a wide variety of ages. So it's not just, the folks in the C-suites, so to speak, and not saying that everybody who's in a C-suite is older, but there's a lot of younger people and people my age who just have this kind of like fear and like you're gonna get left behind if
Yep.
you don't embrace it. And there are so many people that you can talk to make you feel more comfortable or ways to get involved in AI. Like take advantage of them. There are
Yeah.
so many people out there that want to help.
Yeah. And there's a whole podcast called Destination Discourse that they talk about this all the time. So there are, again, there's thought leaders, there's resources. And I would just encourage folks like I want to say I was a late adopter, but I did not adopt it in 2023. We'll say that. And so I've been kind of,
Really, that
yeah,
kind of
yeah, I
surprises
would,
me.
yeah. And the reason is it was kind of like, I, I have a bit my work ethic for those of you who don't know me too well, my work ethic is very like old school. And so I was like, oh, I'll bootstrap this. Like I can send my own emails and I can do my own automation, like blah, blah, blah. And then I'm like, well, there's a middle ground. There's a middle ground. If you use it as a tool, if you use it to replace you, it will replace you. If you use it to
Yes,
enhance you, it will make you 10 times better, right?
exactly. And that's kind of like the gist of the conversation from the piece.
Ah, I
Like,
love it.
yeah.
I love it. And so kind of rounding this out here with your fifth point, um, are we shifting from management to stewardship of the community's identity? Um, Interesting take. I'm interested to hear more in your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So, it's kind of one of the things that I mentioned. It's like the modern DMO mandate really is expanding. We're expected to be, helping with, resident um, relocation
Yep.
and helping, our economic development companies recruit new companies to come into our destinations, things like this. So, the role of the DMO is expanding. A lot of people would say, excellent. That means that we have a seat at the table, we're being taken seriously, and we want to touch everything. But again, how can we? We can't do it all.
Right.
So, how are we shifting to becoming stewards within our community's identity, like balancing the need for high-spending visitors with the responsibility of maintaining accessible, welcoming destinations for all? Are we treating our residents as partners in our brand, or is it just a sentiment to be managed? And so, I think that those are, again, really powerful questions, and we would be remiss to not have those conversations while we've got all of these amazing minds in these rooms. It can be easy to get caught up and say like, oh, this is the one time where like I'm in the space where I can bounce ideas off of my peers and learn how people that aren't me and my destination, like how are other people doing it? There's no reason to reinvent the wheel. That's really again like the gist of the conversation that I think we should be having while we have this limited amount of time together. What are your thoughts?
No, I totally agree. I think, I've heard different opinions on this. I've had different opinions on this in different times of my career.
Hmm.
And I'm still trying to land the plane. Like, are we DMO, DMMO, DXO? Like, what are we actually doing? Um,
Hmm.
there's benefits to both, right? Like, there's benefits to being given more, a bigger seat at the table, if you will,
Hmm.
and more responsibilities that kind of fall under your economic development umbrella. But
Right.
there's also some drawbacks because are the mandates for the tax dollars changing? And if so, does it have to go through General Assembly depending on your state and depending on your DMO charter? Um, is it a slippery slope? I have a really good friend, Christian Mangle. He was recently on Destination Discourse, and he was asking about would it make sense to fund something like a local, we'll call it like a tourism enhancer,
Hmm.
and use that as an earned media piece and to remove some dollars from out of home advertising and to use that money to fund that. And there's a whole episode on this, and I thought it was a great thought. But then the question was brought up, well, then you're in danger of undermining your charter. And that is a slippery slope too. So I think where I've kind of landed the plane for now, we'll call it a layover. My plane is at a layover right now. And what it is I believe we have to earn the seat at that table. I think where we should be as DMOs is we should be focusing on our charter, which is depending on your DMO, it's different, but at the end of the day, it's marketing your destination, using that marketing to bring in tax dollars and create heads and beds and generate jobs that grow communities, while at the same time earning our seat at the economic development table. And possibly like my DMO here, Discover Jackson County, that I used to work for, they now have a great, fully vibrant grant program that they're using to actually help. And it's within the legal ramifications of the DMO charter, but they're Nick is using that money to actually support. And I, as a resident, have seen some of the things that he's been able to put this money toward enhancing my life. And so we forget that whenever we have restaurants that wouldn't survive without tourists coming in that enhance, our restaurant options, when we have greenways that have, expansions and things like that, that comes from the tourists bringing that money in. And I
Yes.
think we have to earn a seat at the table, but I don't think we need to be changing what we're supposed to be doing to get there. I think if any good functioning DMO worth their weight is going to show the value to their stakeholders, um, with what they do, but it's on us to constantly be advocating for the work that we do. So I know I unloaded a lot there, but at the end of the day, um, this industry, everyone's talking about all of the challenges that we're facing right now. We are facing a lot. The crux of this podcast is the good news in tourism. And so when I think about the DMO of the future, I think about an organization that proactively advocates the work that they do by telling the stories and showing the livelihoods of the residents that live in the destination. The DMO of the future threads that string between we brought in these visitors and these visitors enhanced your life this way. And the DMO of the future has earned a seat at the table with politicians, with economic development, with the hospital, with the big, all of these big stakeholders in the community. And so when I look at the DMO of the future, there's two sides of this coin. There is we are fighting for relevance, but then there's also the DMOs, like I would argue here at Discover Jackson County, that are like, no, we are an integral part of this community, and here's why. Um, and so, yeah, I think there's a lot more opportunity than people think sometimes. I think sometimes we kind of get stuck in this doom spiral. But Aaron, we're here to bring good news, That's what we do.
It's I mentioned being an attendee at the Indiana Tourism Conference. I'm from Indiana, spent 15 years at Visit Bloomington. So it's always a homecoming. It was the 10th anniversary of this program or of this conference last week. And I've had the pleasure of attending 9 of the 10. One of the things that I thought was really great is when it started 10 years ago, it was in Lafayette, Indiana, and it was a handful of awards being presented, right? You're kind of getting started. Maybe like 150, 170 attendees. Like fast forward 10 years, we're in Indianapolis. Uh, right under 400 attendees, so you've doubled, your impact, your footprint. They're handing out almost 40 awards at the event, and the one that is this has just really been resonating with me for the last week is Joe Wade. So she's the law for over 40 years. Joe has served as the executive director of Lafayette West Lafayette Convention and Visitors Bureau, and she is retiring here in the next couple months, and she has received the lifetime. I'm not exactly certain if that's the specific word, but let's call it the Lifetime Achievement Award, right, from the Indiana Tourism Association. And Jamie Bowler Smith, who's the longtime director from Visit Hendricks County. So in some industries, right, CEO, doing the same thing, competition. Well, we all know that in the space, like it's not competition, co-opetition at
Yep.
its best. She went on to provide the room with the amazing impact that Joe has made over the course of 4 decades within not only her own community, but the industry in Indiana and the larger tourism community in general. And I just, at risk of sounding like weirdly morbid, like some of the things that were shared about Joe, like people could only wish to hear about like at their eulogy. And I know
Yeah.
like I don't know if I'm explaining it necessarily correctly, but like man, to be able to hear someone speak to about you in a room of people that are your peers, like people you've known for your entire professional career, like to see like you actually have made such an impact within like your destination, within the industry, like I don't know, it just it was incredible. It was
Yeah.
like the good news, right? It's the stuff
Yeah.
like you said, like the doom spiral or whatever. It can be easy to get around your colleagues in that safe space and like I feel like God, this is the only place I can talk about all of the crazy things that are happening like in my community, in my industry. And like maybe at the CEO summits kind of like a little bit like that too, but to be able to have the chance to hear just the positive impact that she made, not only on like her, again, her community, but the industry, it just left me feeling like so refreshed, as I always do when I attend conferences. And I just, yeah, that was like good news to me. And I really loved that. And I hope that those are the types of things that we can carry through as like we continue to have again, the privilege to serve our communities and, the industry in general.
Yeah. And usually, at the end of these episodes, I ask, give me some good news. And you just said it eloquently and perfectly. It is, I talked about this on episode, I think 21, but this industry is smaller and it's also like bigger than we think. And sometimes those friendships carry a long way. I've got friends I made in this industry that I could call right now. I've got people I say I love you to when I see them. Like it really is like it is a tight knit industry, and I think at the end of the day, there's a lot of good happening in our industry, and that's what I hope that we deliver in this podcast, but also you and I in our roles and what we do to service the industry, um, things can get dark, things can get challenging, but I think it's also on us to help uplift and tell those positive stories too. So, Erin, as we kind of land the plane, man, we got a lot of plane jokes today. As we land the plane here today, where can people find you if they want to learn more and connect with you at CEO Summit?
So obviously, folks can connect with me anytime on LinkedIn. Erin White is the handle that you can find me most frequently. Again, also really involved in Destinations International. So you'll catch me in person most recently or in the near future at the CEO Summit and then some state tourism conferences in Michigan and e-tourism summit after that. But the phone line, I guess I'm dating myself, the phone and the chats are always open. Um, Even if that's just to connect over a shared experience or like I'm running into this, like I want to be a problem solver. It brings me a lot of joy to be able to put my DMO hat on and
Yeah.
be fantastic to connect. So thanks.
And Aaron, I will echo that for as long as I've known you, you are a true asset to this industry. You are a true thought leader. You are what I hope all people doing any form of biz dev in this industry would be. So just keep leading, keep shining bright, keep being positive, and just bring in that $1 million smile to all your conversations. I truly enjoy talking with you, and I'm honored that you wanted to be on the podcast
Oh,
today. And so, if people want to find me, I am on Substack. You can find me at Caleb Talks Tourism on Substack. Also, if you want to be on the show or reach out to me via email, it is good news, the number 4 tourism at gmail.com. And as always, you can find me on LinkedIn. And this has been some good news.